All right, today we're going to take a question. I don't have the exact question in front of me, but it was essentially, what does your personal training and instructor development look like, and can you talk through that sort of thing? And I thought that'd make for an interesting conversation. So the way I view it is I basically break it out into two different paths. I've got my personal training and development that I'm continually striving to go down that path. I'm always working to get a little better. I'm always training, just trying to grind and get better, just like everybody else. And it doesn't just come from the fact that I'm still competing, although I am always trying to move up, do a little better at matches. But I'm also internally driven to just get better all the time. I can't really explain where it comes from. Even if I wasn't competing, I would still be training just because I like have this fire, this compulsion that drives me to continually be better, keep training, try to get better, keep training, try to get better. Can't really explain it. But I think there's some benefit there because the more time you spend training, the more ways you've failed, the more ways you've figured out solutions to problems, the deeper your pool of understanding comes from. And then that is the pool that you draw from to coach from. So the more ways you have messed it up and tried to fix it, or the more ways you have failed this particular task, the more opportunities that gives you to look at a student and go, hey, I think I understand, or I've got a pretty good idea of what you're doing, and here's how I fixed it, or this worked for me, you might try that. As opposed to, I tried that one time and this is what I did, or I tried it once and it worked, and that's it. So the more training you have, the more time you spent struggling with any particular concept or skill, the broader your level of knowledge is going to be, the easier it's going to be to teach from. Um, and then I look at instructor development. So not just my shooting skill, but like my ability to teach, coach, convey information, um, diagnose what a student's doing. And I am constantly working on that as well. So one of the things that I do most often is solicit feedback from other instructors. So at work, I'm always bugging the guys I work with. Hey, that last block I just taught, break it down for me. Did I talk too much? Did I not talk enough? Could I be giving more information in less words? Excuse me. Could I get the concept across in fewer words and get them shooting sooner? Or did I leave out something that was pretty important by trying to cut it down too much? How do I make it better? I'm always bugging them to like tear me down and give me more feedback. When Joel and I go on the road and teach, back at the hotel or at dinner or whatever, I'm always bugging him. Hey, critique this block, or what did I do? Did I, what can I do better? How do I make this more efficient? How do I become a better conveyor of information? Conveyor. How do I get better at conveying this information to the students faster so that I'm talking less and get them shooting sooner? I'm always bugging the guys I work around to be very critical of how they hear me speaking, how I'm briefing the drills, the way I'm coaching, and trying to improve. I'm just asking the other guys that are doing the job because they hear me the most often, and I'm trying to get them to let me know. I also solicit feedback from the students, and not just in a, hey, does that make sense sort of way. Sometimes when you ask that question, you'll get people that raise their hand and go, I didn't really understand that. But it happens less often than you might think. And especially in like a recruit situation where they're brand new, everything's a little bit big for them. They don't want to be the one that raises their hand and says, hey, I didn't really get that. And I try to break the ice with them early on by letting them know, hey, listen, my job is to make sure that you understand these concepts. Your job is to make sure that you let me know if what I'm saying doesn't make sense. In order for me to do my job, you have to do your job. So I'm giving them permission to tell me that I didn't explain it well. And I'll tell them I will explain it in 3 or 4 other ways until you understand. And a lot of times that helps break the ice a little bit, but that's not always enough. One of the things that I have done several times is I will explain things. I will explain a concept in a couple of different ways, and then I will ask them after the fact, which one made more sense? Which one resonated with you as a whole? I'm going to have folks raise their hand, and then I, over time, have chosen the explanation that resonates with the most people, and that's the one I lead with. As an example, I had a group of students one time. I was briefing doubles. I explained it in kind of the traditional manner of, hey, we're going to be firing aggressive pairs. We're going to let the dot settle down. We're going to fire aggressive pair, let the dot settle down. You're going to lock your vision on this spot. You're going to pull the trigger about as fast as you can. And you're just going to observe what's going on as you stay connected to the gun. Try not to make any inputs on the gun. A pair, let the gun settle. A pair, let the gun settle about as fast as you can. And then I had them shoot the drill. And then after a couple of magazines worth, I brought them back in and I briefed it in a different way. I said, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to lock your vision on that focus spot in the center of the target. And you're going to fire a pair. On the first round, you're going to pull the trigger. The dot's going to go away. You're going to keep your vision locked on that spot. And when you predict, based on your training and experience, when you predict that that dot is going to arrive at the spot you're looking at, I want you to pull the trigger again. Same idea. We're going to stay connected to the gun. We don't want to make any input on it. But instead of the focus being on you pulling the trigger as fast as you can, I want you to be focused on the target, and your goal is to pull the trigger when you think the dot's going to be there. Not when you see it get there, but when you predict that it will be there. You're pulling the trigger then. And then I have them shoot the drill again, and then I ask them, like, hey, which explanation made more sense to you? Which one did you like better? Which one gave you better results? And after doing that with several classes, everybody liked the second explanation better. So now that's the explanation I lead off with. That's the way I brief that drill. This is an abbreviated version, but that's how I brief the drill now. And so I learned that by soliciting feedback from the students. And I think as an instructor, that's a good thing to do. Ask the students outright, hey, don't worry about hurting my feelings. Tell me, did you like the way I explained it this way? Did you like the way I explained it that way? Why? Which did you like better and why? Something else I will do is I work on my demos. And when I say work on them, I don't just shoot them until I get them right. I don't just shoot them until they're super slick, really fast, super impressive. I work on them because I want them to be very, very obvious. I want the teaching points to be very clear on what I'm trying to convey. And then I also work on shooting them incorrectly on purpose. So when I make bad demos, I want the teaching points to be very obvious to anybody who's watching. And then I want to be able to do like a correct demo, then demo a couple incorrectly and immediately go back and demo it correctly again. Anybody who's ever tried to flip-flop back and forth, it's harder than it sounds. So we're always working the demos to make sure I can make those examples very clean and then flip back and forth without having to do a mulligan of like, oh, I messed that up. Let me try that again. What else? I like to watch a bunch of people's content. The folks that put their classes out online, I'll watch through that. And then when I go to in-person classes, yes, I'm looking to improve my skill, but I'm also there. A big portion of why I'm there is I'm listening and observing the way they teach. How do they brief drills? How do they explain concepts? How do they conceptualize those concepts? What's the progression that they use as far as how they build up skills? How isolated do they make them? How do they string them together? What does that progression look like? What's the language they use when they coach? How do they coach other shooters? Are they just providing they tell them like, hey, this is what you're doing? Or are they kind of asking them questions, some sort of combination? I'm just always looking at other folks because I'm not arrogant enough to believe that I'm doing it the best of anybody out there. So I'm always looking at other folks, figure out where they do it better. What can I learn from that? How can I incorporate the things they do better into the way I do things? And then I also take the things, the drills or the concepts or the ideas that they're putting out, and I take them back to my training and I work on them. And I look and see, does this make sense to me? I don't like everything that I try, but I train it anyway. I work through it a little bit anyway, because you don't really own an idea as far as having, I don't mean own as in like, it's mine. I heard somebody else say it, but now it's mine. I don't mean that. I mean, you don't really have ownership of a concept until you've taken it and you've trained it a bunch, kind of tore it down, failed through it, succeeded, worked it inside and out. Now you have some opinions and some ownership of the concepts there because you've spent time with it. Until you do that, you don't really have the ability to have like a real opinion about it. And so I like to do those things so then I can understand, is this worth incorporating? Do I want to change it a little bit and maybe do it that way? Do I not like that at all? All of those things have happened, but either way, I end up forming opinions and it helps me move forward and get better. And then finally, like I read a ton. I've read everything I can get my hands on that has anything to do with like training, shooting, like my own personal training or how to train to get better. I've read everything I can find about like coaching other, sorry, coaching other shooters. I've read tons and tons of stuff about skill acquisition and coaching skill acquisition. That's primarily sports based, but I think there's a lot of carryover as far as teaching somebody how to develop a skill, whether it's kicking a soccer ball or shooting a basketball or shooting a gun. There's a lot of carryover as far as just general skill acquisition and coaching. I read that stuff all the time. Now, all work, no play makes Jack a dull boy. So it's not like that's the only thing I read. I like my books, my brain candy too, but I try to, do like one or two brain candy books and then, a meat and broccoli or, eat your veggies kind of a book where it helps me get a little better as a professional. And then maybe another brain candy book and then another professional book. I try to like sprinkle them back in so that I don't get too dull. But I'm always reading, always trying to kind of grow the knowledge base. A lot of times I'll end up getting ideas or concepts and I'm not even sure where it came from. It's like I probably read something on that, but I don't really remember. And ultimately it doesn't matter. I don't care, if I thought of it or not. Like it's really more just about, can I be a better coach? And when I say I don't care if I thought of it or someone else, what I don't mean not giving credit to people who came up with a concept. I absolutely think credit where credit due is important. But what I mean is, after a while, you've read enough stuff, you've watched enough stuff, you've kind of consumed enough other people's content or watched enough explanations of a certain concept where after a while it all blends together and you're like, I don't really know where this amalgamation of ideas came from that I'm now using. I'm sure I borrowed some of it. Maybe some of it is my own. But in the end, it's really for me just about being a better teacher and a better coach. And that's all of those things I'm kind of doing on a continual basis, always trying to get better, always trying to improve. Because ultimately that's my job, is I just want to be a better teacher. So anyway, guys, if you got any other questions about this or something that didn't make sense, you want more explanation, drop the comments down below. Otherwise, I hope that helps. Take care.